So there's the scenario training. Then that's what ties, because with martial arts, they don't really apply context, right? A lot of the training modules is on a mat. It's ritualistic, and what often happens in the scheme of that part of the brain, without getting too scientific, is that you only get ready when those other environmental cues are there. When you're in your regular clothes, regular shoes, and something happens.
Mike DeSargo, how are you, man?
Awesome, brother. How you doing?
You are awesome. I agree. Now, you're from Stronghold Dynamic.
Yes, sir. That's the company name.
Talk a little bit about Stronghold Dynamic.
Yeah, so I've been working in private security for some time, and I've also been teaching firearms on the side as well. But there's kind of a confluence between the two, and a lot of what I do is risk advisory, where I help people either with their travel security. If I'm not literally the guy on the ground providing protection, I often go into the analytics about what's the actual risk they're facing and some things they could do to mitigate those risks as they go about that process.
Oh, wow.
So,
now, who would need that? Like, who would need that kind of counseling? Someone famous like Sam, and he's traveling.
1,000%. Not just because he's famous, but because he's a beautiful human being with his face.
You can't just walk around being that good looking without security.
Yeah.
I get you.
Yeah. So,
like an executive going to Mexico? Or?
It could be that, or I mean, even nowadays we get a lot of Bitcoin millionaires that they just walked into this wealth. And
you know a lot of Bitcoin millionaires?
Relative to me being poor, yes.
So that's one.
Yeah, so that's one.
So you get people that they just have a bunch of wealth.
Yeah, or maybe they don't even have wealth. Maybe they have an actual risk, some TROs or something, or even maybe some workplace stuff, and or they're traveling internationally to certain places, and they need to better understand what to be aware of in those circumstances, whether it's Morocco or it's London. Some people may be only used to carrying a firearm, and now they're going to, say, Japan, and they may be walking into a place where there's some risk involved, and they want to know how to defend themselves. So,
or they might be going to L.A. or Detroit or San Francisco or Baltimore.
Yeah, Great Wolf Lodge in L.A.
Okay, and then you teach as well.
I do.
All levels.
I do, absolutely.
Advanced on down to beginner.
Yeah, and the counter-ambush program that we teach, we always start people from the baseline, no matter how much experience they have, and walk them up. Because
I say it in jest and trying to make a joke, but I mean, Detroit's a dangerous city.
Yep.
If somebody came to you and said, "Hey, I got to go to Detroit on business," what's some of the advice you'd give somebody? Maybe I don't know. Maybe they don't need like a full-on cadre of in a bulletproof Buick or whatever. But what's some advice you'd give somebody? Buick? Hey, I'm going to a
Buick.
What's the
bulletproof Buick?
What's the big Buick that they all use?
You caught my attention.
No, that SUV that they all ride around.
The Cadillac.
Maybe it's a Cadillac.
Yeah, the Escalade thing.
That's not much. If it's not a Jeep, it's just another car.
I'm going to Detroit, so I'm going to pay really good attention. I'm leaving Tuesday, so
okay.
I know.
And he doesn't have a bulletproof Buick.
And I don't have a bulletproof Buick.
So what's some advice you'd give somebody?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways you could approach it, and really looking at statistics and using evidence-based data to drive what you're going to actually do. And it's not too dissimilar to going to certain areas of Mexico. I don't know if you heard about what happened in Baja with some of the surfers and just random act of violence.
I did. It was totally. I didn't hear the conclusion. I was sure they were missing.
Yeah, they were murdered.
They found them.
Oh my God!
Unfortunately, and according to the press, it was a random act. Apparently, the cartel actually helped hunt these guys down and find them to arrest them.
Wait! It was the criminals. It was a random act by criminals. So the drug cartel helped hunt down the random criminals?
Yes.
And why would they do that?
So there's a dynamic in South America, and specifically in Mexico, where it's a business, right? And a lot of times Americans are protected. This is why a lot of people deny that it's dangerous down there, because a lot of times college students is actually the customer base. And so there's a certain level of protection there. And so
these surfers are customers. They're buying
they
pot
may be
and whatever.
perceived as customers because they bring money into the economy.
Or
and
potential.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, you know as well as I do, if everybody in Mexico attacked all the Americans that came down there, then there would be nobody going down there. So and in this situation, they were after their vehicle.
That's what the press release said. There was some random people that thought they wanted to carjack these guys, and apparently they didn't want to give it up, and so they got shot in the back of the head. And so,
I don't think that's true, because guns are illegal in Mexico, so there's no way they could have shot him.
No, this is all just conspiracy theory.
Yeah, totally.
That's crazy. All right, let's get to it. So Dave's going to Detroit.
Yeah.
What's Dave got to know?
What do I got?
So if you have access to certain crime casts and look at where the crime is happening and compare that against your routes of travel to where you're going, try to develop a guideline itinerary. You don't have to stick to it religiously, but you can start looking for the conduits, because one way to look at that is that people live there, right? And they live there every day. And so there's a certain level of safe practice that they're practicing to not get shot.
Now, who provides this type of information? So,
you can
I
go
fly into Detroit. Yeah. Do I have an app?
So it's better if you do
Detroit?
It before. Like plan all this out before you get out there and touch the ground, because as soon as you touch the ground, you're already going into what's called exposure risk, right? You're now exposed to the risk dynamics, but a lot of times things are catastrophized, where we talk about there's all kinds of shootings in Detroit. Well, yeah, I'm sure I could go.
You can go
walk
to
down the
Chula
block.
Vista, you can go to Lemon Grove, you can go to El Cajon and get shootings. That's not the issue.
Right. And so it's really understanding how these crimes are happening, how these shootings are happening, what's the motive behind the shootings, if they're random or if they're really targeted, and what locations are there certain hotspots. So I would really look at your schedule and look at where you want to go, where you plan to go, what time of day you want to go. And then contrast that. You could look up their sheriff's departments or law enforcement agencies, see if they have free crime maps. A lot of agencies provide that. There's some paid services that'll do that as well. And then really contrast it against what you want to do, because we kind of have a saying where it's safety third. Right?
Safety third.
Safety third.
What's first?
First is establishing what it is you want to do.
What's second?
Identifying. Second is understanding the risk that you might encounter that will stop you from doing number one. So then third is, okay, what can we do to minimize that risk so you could actually go out and get the freedom that you deserve to do what the hell you want to do. Right? We don't want this fear to stop you from exercising your freedom from doing things you want to do.
Interesting.
How sad is this connotation?
How sad is it that we're talking about an American city?
That's what I'm saying. How sad. I mean, if I was going to maybe Guatemala or some other place, I could understand it. But we're talking about the United States.
We're talking about Detroit, Chicago, New Orleans, Baltimore, L.A., San Francisco, Portland, Seattle.
Yeah, I'm looking at going to Seattle, and people are telling me to stay away from the city. So it's like I can't bring my family to the fish market and let the kids experience that.
Oh, the traffic sucks down there. I wouldn't go back to that fish market for love nor money.
I'll just go to Seafood City.
Hours to go a mile.
Something's got to happen. Something's got to happen.
Well, and here's the interesting thing is nobody's got a fix. They just say, oh, well, don't go here and don't go there. And don't. Why don't you fix the problem?
Like every fix is mean. Can't be mean to people.
Yeah. I know.
Dave.
Yeah. I know. I got to work harder.
Okay, so one of the things I want to talk about. So you work with new shooters a lot, right? Brand new gun owners,
and as well as seasoned armed professionals. And it really doesn't change the content of what we teach. I've recently gone public with a strategic partner that I've been working with for years. It's QRF Assets, and they're composed of some really cool dudes.
What is it? QRF?
QRF Assets.
Okay.
And the founder, he's kind of known as the uncoolest cool guy you'll probably ever meet.
Wow.
And he's like, nobody's ever heard of him, but he's a legend in some circles, and he's like a Yoda. Like you would never suspect that this guy's lethal as he is. And he kind of leans into that. Like he's talking about buying a Datsun to roll around in, old school car kind of thing. But he's a brilliant guy. He's intelligent. He's an asset, and I'm honored to be a strategic partner and to have worked with him. He's a close friend as well. He was part of the Pelicadas group,
okay.
That went down there. And the reason why I bring that up is because a lot of times beginners have this outlook when it comes to training that we all hear the thing, well, my dad was a cop, I don't need training thing, or whatever. Some kind of appeal to authority, right? Or I'm going to go train with a Marine, or I'm going to train with a SEAL, I'm going to do all this to help me with my EDC. And while that has some indirect translation, it's not quite context specific, right? And what we're really talking about with defensive shooting is something that you didn't know was going to happen, and you don't know what's going to happen next. So by virtue, it's that counter ambush paradigm that we really have to focus on. Whereas a lot of armed profession lifestyles, you have a high level of anticipation. You wear a uniform, you're going in knowing that you're about to encounter violence, or you're going on a raid, or you're going on a mission, or you're doing something where you have a high level of anticipation. And while anticipation absolutely helps with the recognition process and processing that information when violence happens.
2 minutes.
When you're out and you're shopping for ice cream, with your kids and you're trying to decide, trying to get them non-dairy, vanilla, chocolate, then pop, there's like brain matter on the floor. And now there's that emotional valence that you have to process. The disbelief is it like, this is Detroit. Like, what? Oh, of course I should have expected this. Right. But that amounts of psychological processing, there's some things that happen with the mind and body that affect the way you apply skills. We call them performance diminishers. And so whether they're a seasoned armed professional or a beginner, we take them from baseline and show them, for example, a common shooting technique is having your head upright and bringing the gun up to your line of sight and standing with their like really straight posture, right?
Right.
And the way that became popular when you start really walking that back was with some armed professionals. They have a heavy helmet with nods. Then any bend in the neck is a high fatigue position. Same thing with the kit. If you have like 15, 20 pounds of kit, if you have any lean in any direction, it's a high fatigue position. It's going to affect your balance speed.
1 minute.
But in a counter ambush situation, when you're startled, the human body is likely to be in this kind of crouched position, right? And it's not the best stable marksmanship position to be in. The question is, can you apply effective skills from that less desirable position?
And that's what I want to talk about. When we get back from the break, I really want to I want to talk about some essential self-defense skills that you really need to master before owning a gun. Because I think a lot of people, it's pretty obvious, no matter who you are, no matter where you are politically, no matter what we believe, a firearm is the most effective self-defense tool ever created. But there's a lot to know and a lot to learn. You can't just buy a gun and expect to be safe. So let's talk about some essential self-defense skills when we get back. Stronghold dynamic, essential self-defense skills to master before owning a gun. Talk about that. You've decided you want to get a gun because you want to be able to effectively defend yourself out either in your home or outside of your home. What are some of the essential skills you need to learn before?
What I'd recommend is really reflecting on the gun as your last resort. So knowing that it's your absolute last option, what other options do you actually have? And if the only other option is to run, then we need to change that a bit. And so there are some things before purchasing the gun that we can do, like getting training and education so that way you make an informed decision about what kind of gun to buy. And then there's less lethal options, but that's not the priority in my opinion, whether you use pepper spray or taser or other less lethal tools. Another lethal tool is a knife. I don't recommend that yet. The reason being is that you get more return on investment if you can invest some time, money, energy, and effort and patience in some kind of hand-to-hand training. With physicality being a limiter, I get it, but things like jiu-jitsu can be scaled down to accommodate for your physicality, whether you have injuries or whether you have age limitations where your body's just not moving as well. Maybe you have some cardiopulmonary things where you can't perform as long in duration.
My body's not moving as well.
Right.
I guarantee you.
It could certainly be scaled down, and the benefits you get from it is not only do you have another layer of defense to protect yourself when you go hands-on, but it actually teaches you more about violence, and it teaches you more about yourself with what happens with your mind and body when you experience the attack, when you experience suffering, when you experience discomfort, when you experience failure, and how to problem solve and work through that problem. Because when we talk about defensive shooting ultimately is about learning about your environment. You didn't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen next. So you have to sort through all that information and get really good at problem solving. And so if you could take, say, 2 years of Muay Thai, if you have the physicality to do it, if you could find a coach that could help scale it down, give you some of that experience, learn how to use your mind and body, maybe then when it comes to things like pepper spray, the reason why I put that after getting some kind of martial arts training.
Now, let's back up.
Yeah.
What do you like about Muay Thai?
It includes different parts of your body to smash with, to be able to hit with, to weaponize the different parts of your body to really use force. But it's also tested because they do a lot of sparring, and so they rule out a lot of bugs, right? I started with Chinese martial arts, and in Chinese martial arts, there's a lot of close quarter stuff. It's a lot of high intricate, high level precision movement in it, and I love it to death because I'm kind of a nerd that way. But there were some things that happened in my lifestyle that allowed me to access those skills under stress because I lived a violent lifestyle. So the psychology is an important part, whether the skills are transferable.
So that led you to Muay Thai. You feel like Muay Thai is it's good for beginners. It's good for self-defense.
Absolutely, because
it's very broad.
The training method accounts for quite a bit, the way it's evolved over time, and it's gross motor enough that it's good pressure tested. So if you don't have a lifetime to commit, then do 6 months maybe of Muay Thai, and you should get some basic understanding of how you perform when it comes to striking.
Okay, so empty hand, Muay Thai, you like that. And
Yeah.
then next you pepper spray. Talk about
Jiu-jitsu.
pepper spray.
I'd say jiu-jitsu.
Okay, jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
because that is a lot of grappling. And
Yeah, and the grappling gives you a humane way of controlling a threat,
I
right?
think, Alicia, you do jiu-jitsu, don't you? Don't you roll with a bunch of big dogs?
I actually do. It's technically Krav Maga, which kind of integrates a number of different elements. It's a Muay Thai. It's a little bit of jiu-jitsu, a little bit of everything.
I think Krav Maga and jiu-jitsu have a like a common ancestor, don't they? Didn't they both start in Brazil?
Israel, I believe, is where
Israel.
Krav Maga.
But I think Krav Maga came from. I think it was
Oh, I
someone
gotcha.
that was
Yeah.
trained in
Yeah.
Brazil,
Yes.
went to Israel, and they said, "Hey, we need to teach a bunch of civilians how to kill people right now."
Right.
And it was somebody who, I think they both came from the same, which came from Japan,
Yeah.
then Brazil,
Yeah.
then Israel. Anyway,
Yeah.
okay. So Muay Thai. So you like Muay Thai, you like jiu-jitsu, but then after empty hand defense is pepper spray.
I personally would recommend a really bright flashlight. Personally,
Really? Okay, talk about that.
So with pepper spray,
Sell me on that. I'm not sold that a really bright flashlight.
Yeah.
Really bright flashlight's going to do
Really
much.
bright
So what do you do
flashlight.
with a bright flashlight?
First, I want to talk about why I choose the flashlight over all the other ones, like pepper spray.
Okay.
Because if there's a certain level of resistance and things don't work out the way it does, aside from the aerosolization and everybody getting pepper sprayed, if you can use a gel, blah blah blah, there's still a potential of getting into contact space, and that pepper spray also getting smeared all over you, and then now you have to go hands on anyways, right?
Gotcha.
With the flashlight, so before I started martial arts, the fundamental self-defense thing is if you get jumped, just pop people in the nose and run, because that disrupts the airway. It gets their vision impaired because your eyes are watering, all that stuff, right? With a flashlight, you get a similar kind of visual disruption that's distractive enough for you to maybe bounce if you have to book it and run. So like I have this 1,000 lumen Surefire stiletto, and it serves a couple of things as a deterrent, right? Because predators want easy prey to pounce on. But if you're doing a flashlight, that's high visibility, it's drawing a lot of attention. So that serves as a deterrent right off the bat. And also predators don't like to be seen. So if you just kind of bounce the light off the ground and it happens to radiate towards them, they're probably going to be potentially less inclined to target you. Right?
Gotcha.
So as far as target selection.
So you stick it in their eyes. They're for a split second. They're blind, and then you can get out of there.
yeah, and it's probably going to piss them off, And so
well,
like
you can get out of there. The point
potentially.
is, you're not trying to win a fight.
maybe
You're trying to get the
unless
heck
you
out of
need
there.
to, right? And so that's next level of the utility of the flashlight. If you couldn't get out there, if the guy was already like sprinting full speed before you could get him, and by the time he gets to you, his eyes will still need to adjust. So now he has to rely on his sense of feel or whatever. But in that moment, he's not seeing what you're doing. And if you get a good solid flashlight, going back to that fundamental of just popping them in the nose with a steel flashlight, it becomes a very good blunt impact tool to
Okay.
use.
So let's go to pepper spray now. So
yeah.
pepper spray is next level.
Yeah, and this is not to say to carry all these things, but like if this is what you prefer to carry, the challenge is having it in such a way because the carryability is an issue. So predominantly, people who ask me about pepper spray are women, and they tend to carry it in their purse because not many women's clothes have pockets, right? And so that's the general challenge with just the dynamics of fashion and how most of the population thinks about things. So the ability to access it becomes difficult, and making sure you don't accidentally discharge it in any reason in your pocket is another challenge. But having ruled all that out, Alicia's taught people how to use this properly, right? And you could use what we recommend is a gel because that has less aerosolization.
Yeah.
And so then you could start really targeting with the single stream of gel. So that is the viable option if you're going that option. If you have martial arts, if you have a flashlight, then I feel more comfortable with people getting knife training and firearms training.
So go ahead.
I just want to ask a question.
Yeah.
Just the thought of getting bopped in the nose with a steel flashlight seems rather painful.
I don't think it'd do any damage. To
How do
your
you
nose.
know how hard? How hard would you do it? You just bop it, or do you
Yeah, so
nail
it's just cartilage, right? There's no like
it? Yeah.
bone
So you
or
just
anything.
give it to them.
Yeah, so if you just go full ape and just start hammer fisting over, they're going to turn their head, they're going to do different things. It's disruptive. We're not trying to end the fight. We're trying to disrupt and demotivate. And if they happen to get knocked out, if their nose happens to break,
Yeah. that's
fantastic.
fine.
You have more leverage to get away.
So it's not just one hit. You think
Oh, no.
multiple?
Yeah, if you need to, like, if they start going hands-on with you, right? Because remember that you're also disrupting their line of sight, their vision, and so their ability to apply harm is diminished by that much, right? Where they can't see you as well, and if you're making contact and you're disrupting, if you start to affect that trauma, they're turning their head, they can't get quite oriented. What they're most likely to do instinctively is to try to pick you up and tackle you, right? And that's where the jiu-jitsu becomes a necessary component, right? And so. It's not a guarantee, but that's, in my opinion,
Or as you said, it'll really piss them off.
right.
As if they weren't mad before, they're going to be mad now. It's like hitting a bear in the nose.
I haven't done that. I haven't had the pleasure of hitting.
You ever got hit in the nose with anything?
I've gotten hit in the nose, a few times.
Yeah.
I didn't deserve any of them.
Well, of course you didn't.
I got kicked I got donkey kicked in the nose by a rollerblade one time.
Did you really?
Yeah, that was horrible.
Doesn't
That's
that
why
make
I'm
your
so
nose-
good looking.
Doesn't that make your nose just ache when that happens?
It made me rethink a lot of things in life.
So what we're really trying to do is affect the sinus cavities, right? Because when we look at what pepper spray does, that's effectively what it does is increase the mucus secretion, affect the airway, affect the vision with the tears coming out, right? And so that's the idea behind just repeatedly. You don't overcomplicate it. You don't have to worry about targeting anything else. If you happen to hit them in the skull because they're turning their head, it's the tool and not your fist that's making contact, right? And there's some other things with unarmed training, like hitting the vagus nerve. So if you have those other skills before going to the flashlight, before going to the pepper spray, it doesn't matter if he's pissed off, right? And a lot of times when people are pissed off, they're going to be prone to mistakes if you're familiar with the body language.
especially if they get angry.
Yeah,
But really a lot of what you're talking about, you're talking about, I don't know, maybe the best term is like, an adversary that's not determined. If this is somebody who's, if it's a crime of passion, then they're going to do everything they can to hurt you. But you're talking about, most of the time it's going to be, an opportunity, a crime of opportunity. You're walking through a parking lot and they just want to see if they can get some money. They don't want to fight.
Right.
They don't want to take it to the mat. They don't want to. They just want an easy target, grab your money, and go. But if you hit them, hit them with a pepper spray, if you, some kind of self-defense, if you pop them in the nose or whatever, then you're going to open up enough time and space that you can get out of there.
But how many people are going to think, okay, do I hit him in the nose, or do I just give him all my money?
Well, I think that's what'll help it with training. Training will help with that mindset.
Yeah, so that, like
Then
putting
it'll
everything
eliminate you giving him the money because you're going to beat him on the nose.
So there's the scenario training. Then that's what ties, because with martial arts they don't really apply context, right? A lot of the training modules is on a mat. It's ritualistic, and what often happens in the scheme of that part of the brain, without getting too scientific, is that you only get ready when those other environmental cues are there. When you're in your regular clothes, regular shoes, and something happens, it feels different because you're not used to executing those skill sets. So it's important to balance all that with scenario training, with de-escalation techniques, and all that good stuff.
All right, Sam, what are you going to do? You're going to hit him in the face with a flashlight?
My flashlight I carry isn't big enough. First step is to try and get away.
Yeah, that would be mine too.
So this is what I carry. And remember that I'm emphasizing that you have foundational unarmed training to be able to do that.
So let's recap that. So Mike DeSargo, Stronghold Dynamic. What's your website?
StrongholdDynamic.com.
StrongholdDynamic.com. And what you're saying is, hey, if you've made the decision to purchase a gun, you want to take your self-defense seriously, there are other steps you need to think about before or maybe at the same time when you're making that decision on what gun to buy, et cetera, et cetera.
And the underlying commonality with the recommendations is your commitment to learning. Because when a lot of people talk about mindset, ultimately it's about your mind state. So even before you buy a gun, learn about how to shoot a gun, learn about home defense, learn about all this so you make appropriate decisions with the caliber and the firearm.
And if they heard this and they're like, okay, I just heard about flashlights, I just heard about, Muay Thai, I just heard about, pepper spray. Are they able to come to you and you help, guide them down the right path? Is that
1,000%.
1,000%. Great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So even if you've already owned a firearm, even if you already have a gun and you don't know anything about pepper spray, you don't know anything about a flashlight, you don't know anything about Muay Thai or whatever, call Mike, Stronghold Dynamic. He's going to help you out. He'll guide you the right way. But please tell everybody who's thinking about getting a gun, go see Mike first.
Especially if you want to get popped in the nose.
That's right.
Because that's part of the training.
I want to come down. Can I volunteer to be the guy that gets popped in the nose? Maybe I have a little,
Come on, you like it.
put some kind of helmet on or something.
Or better yet, how about a taser?
Might improve some
Imagine
things.
shooting him with
I've
a
been
taser.
tased. I don't need that. No.
You've been tased too?
I've been tased.
You were really, I thought you were a better guy than that.
Well, I tased myself. It's a whole story.
Okay, that's
the whole
it.
story.
We don't want to know.
Thanks for watching this clip from Gun Owners Radio. If you're watching mainstream media, you're not getting the truth about guns. Gun Owners Radio is the easiest way to stay on top of the Second Amendment fight, the fight for your self-defense rights. You can watch our live stream on YouTube every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. California time, or if you're in San Diego, AM 1170, FM 96.1, The Answer. We're also available on your favorite podcast platform. Just search Gun Owners Radio and you'll find our show. Like and subscribe to help defend and restore the Second Amendment, not just in California, but across the country.